It's so difficult because, of course, the temptation is to throw your hands up in the air and say, God, that's just what I have to do in order
Just
to
do
buy
it.
something.
Yeah.
But you don't.
You might not realise the impact of that for 2 or 3 years.
Or you might realize it straight away in the next rainstorm and your roof's leaking and you think, oh my God, I need a $20,000 roof. I had no idea.
Yeah.
There are ways you can go about it. And in fact, that's something that we do teach in the course is the whole due diligence process and how you can even do a lot of it before you even inspect the property if you're really confident it's going to be the right one. You can actually get yourself way more ready than other buyers. And even though, yes, they might move quickly because they're panicked and they're going to do it unconditionally, you're not really doing it unconditionally because you have actually done the research and actually made sure that you are well armed. And that's powerful because it's not worth the risk in waiving your rights if you haven't fully checked these, because honestly, the opportunities for things to go wrong, and this is the thing that people don't really focus on because they're too worried about just getting on the ladder. But if you get on the ladder and your rung's been eaten out by termites, you're going to fall off that ladder. You're going to be a bit lower down the ladder than you originally thought you were going to. So, yeah.
Or if the bank doesn't value it at the price that you pay. So if you haven't done your pricing research properly and you make an unconditional offer that's not subject to finance approval and the bank comes back and says, you've paid way overs here, then somehow you've got to find that extra money to make up between what they'll lend you and what you've paid for the property. So unless you've got fairly deep pockets or bank of mum and dad available, then, you really need to think about these things prior to making the offer. If you've thought about them and that is within your risk profile and you have got some contingencies to deal with it, great. You are in a powerful position.
Yeah. And look, that's one of the things that is so important about the course, the PACE system, getting everything done in the right order. And I think back to when I bought my first house. It's a long time ago. It's before I know what I know now, right? I had a little apartment. A little tiny apartment. I think I've told this story before in an earlier podcast. I won't go into it again. It was ridiculously small, so small, in fact, I outgrew it far too quickly. So you can hear mistake, mistake, mistake. So, we're not perfect here. We have made these mistakes before we knew better. And then...
Yes, absolutely. We are just a collection of our experiences.
Yes. And then I went with my ex and we went to buy a house. And I knew I had to sell the apartment. But what I didn't know, because I was given advice by a broker who wasn't as good as we would recommend you get, and I was given advice from the broker that didn't take into account the fact that the apartment that I had was less than 50 square metres. And when I first bought it, there was no 50 square metre rule in that the banks would happily lend me the money for it. But then by the time I went to sell it 5 years later, the rules had changed and they would allow, if that was bigger than 50 square metres based on the figures, based on all the numbers and the rent I was getting for it, et cetera, I would be allowed to keep it. But because it was less than 50 square metres, the bank said, no, you can't. You have to sell it. They wouldn't actually let us settle on the house until I sold the apartment. And I had exchanged contracts with a deadline. And all of a sudden, I'm in a world of panic and pain. Now, my ex's parents bailed us out in the short term, and I did sell it, and we got the money. It was fine. But that was something that I hadn't anticipated. And so, there's a number of mistakes. And so it really is about getting the advice in the right order. I got the advice in completely the wrong order.
You didn't know what you didn't know.
Panic.
And that's the whole thing, right? I mean, that's the basis of what we put our heads together to do. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But over time you sort of pick up that knowledge. Look,
so I think that the moral of that whole story and everything we're saying here is really that if you are well prepared, right? So today is the 1st of September. If you're listening to this, the day it's released, it's the 1st of September. It's the first day of spring, right? Now, if you're not already prepared, go and get prepared quickly. It's so important to be prepared before you really get out there and get active. And making sure that you know what it is you're looking for. You know what your financial situation is. You know who your support crew is going to be. You know where you're going to get the advice from, when you need the advice. And if you don't know all this stuff, then buy the course, because that's where you'll learn it. Because when you're prepared, you will recognize a good opportunity and you'll know how to go about pouncing and getting it. or you'll have the confidence to walk away, let it go if it is
Mhm.
getting crazy.